The children of Congo have been dying for years. Several other conflicts, such as in Sudan, exist on the continent. We would have liked to see the African Union generate the forces and all the necessary strategies to support these states so they can regain peace.
Ibrahim Traoré's rise in Burkina Faso has become one of the most symbolic moments in Africa's ongoing struggle with neo-colonial domination. His actions, rhetoric, and defiance of France and other Western powers mark not just the story of one young soldier turned leader, but the embodiment of a wider African movement seeking to reclaim sovereignty. To understand the intensity of his confrontation with the West, it is important to recall the background that shaped him and the frustrations of his people. Burkina Faso, once called Upper Volta under French colonial rule, has lived under the weight of external domination for more than a century. Even after independence in 1960, France never truly let go. Through the mechanisms of Francofrique, Paris maintained its grip on African economies, currencies, and politics. The CFA franc, tied to the French treasury, became a symbol of this dependency, and French companies dominated vital sectors. French military presence was justified as security partnership, but was in reality a means of maintaining influence. One of the few leaders who dared to resist was Thomas Sankara, who led Burkina Faso from 1983 until his assassination in 1987. Sankara rejected foreign aid, promoted self-sufficiency, and changed the country's name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, meaning the land of upright people. His revolution was cut short, and his murder, widely seen as orchestrated with French backing, became a lesson for future generations. Any African leader who tries to break from Western control risks elimination. Sankara's ghost still haunts Burkina Faso, and Ibrahim Traoré has been widely described as a successor in spirit. Born in 1988, 1 year after Sankara's death, Traoré entered adulthood in a country plagued by poverty and growing insecurity. He became a soldier and witnessed firsthand the failure of successive governments to address the rise of jihadist groups that spread across the Sahel after the collapse of Libya in 2011. By 2022, Burkina Faso was losing vast swathes of territory to militants. Thousands were being displaced, and the government under Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, himself a coup leader earlier that year, was unable to stabilize the nation. Soldiers were increasingly frustrated with poor leadership and the inability to protect civilians. Against this backdrop, Ibrahim Traoré led a mutiny on September 30th, 2022, overthrowing Damiba and promising a new beginning. What made Traoré stand out was not only his youth, but also his boldness in directly challenging Western powers. He quickly declared that Burkina Faso would not continue to be a playground for France or the United States. He did not hide behind diplomatic language, but openly denounced Western hypocrisy. For many ordinary Burkinabe, this was a moment of vindication. Someone had finally expressed publicly what they had long believed. The first major blow he struck was the expulsion of French forces. In January 2023, Traoré's government ordered French troops to leave Burkina Faso. For years, France had maintained counterterrorism operations in the Sahel, claiming to be fighting jihadists, but critics argue that French presence only deepened instability and protected strategic interests rather than African lives. By sending them home, Traoré made it clear that Burkina Faso would chart a new course. This was not an isolated act. Burkina Faso's rejection of France was part of a broader pattern across the Sahel. Mali had already expelled French troops under Assimi Goïta, and Niger would later follow under Abdourahmane Tiani. The symbolism of young military leaders rising against France created an image of a new generation of African rulers unwilling to tolerate neo-colonial dominance. The three countries went on to form the Alliance of Sahel States in 2023, pledging mutual defense and rejecting Western interference. In rallies, people waved Burkinabe and Russian flags side by side, chanting anti-French slogans and hailing Traoré as a new Sankara. Beyond military matters, Traoré also attacked the model of foreign aid. He argued that aid was a trap that gave with one hand and took with the other, keeping Africa dependent. Instead, he called for self-reliance, investment in agriculture, and new partnerships that were not dictated by Western strings. Russia emerged as a natural ally, offering security assistance and training, while China was seen as a partner in infrastructure and economic projects. These relationships were framed not as replacements for France, but as alternatives that could be managed without subservience. Still, critics wondered if Burkina Faso might simply be trading one dependency for another. For Traoré and his supporters, however, the immediate priority was to break the suffocating grip of France. Western powers reacted with alarm. The United States and European Union began imposing sanctions, restricting aid, and warning of isolation. Western media launched campaigns portraying Traoré as a reckless populist or a puppet of Moscow. ECOWAS, the West African regional body often accused of acting as an enforcer of Western interests, threatened sanctions and pressure for a rapid return to civilian rule. But inside Burkina Faso, the harder the pressure from abroad, the stronger the support for Traoré. In demonstrations, thousands of young people called him a hero, not because they believed all problems had been solved, but because he represented dignity and resistance. The ideological significance of Traoré's stance cannot be overstated. He frames his fight as part of a larger struggle for African sovereignty. For decades, the West has preached democracy while supporting dictators when convenient, condemned coups while accepting fraudulent elections, and offered aid that created dependency rather than development. Traoré's defiance exposes this hypocrisy and resonates with millions of Africans, especially the youth, who see their future stolen by corruption and external interference. His speeches echo Sankar's words, but they also capture the anger of a generation that refuses to accept perpetual subordination. Of course, the challenges remain immense. Burkina Faso still suffers from jihadist violence that threatens its stability. The economy is fragile, poverty is widespread, and the departure of Western troops has not magically solved security problems. Sanctions and aid cuts bite hard, leaving the government with limited resources. Critics argue that fiery rhetoric cannot feed people or secure territory. There is also the danger that closer ties with Russia or China could create new forms of dependency if not managed carefully. For Traoré to succeed, he will need more than symbolism. He will need concrete policies that deliver security and development. But for now, the symbolic power of his actions has shaken the foundations of Western dominance in the Sahel. Ibrahim Traoré has shown that it is possible to say no to France, to reject imposed models, and to rally people around the idea of sovereignty. His rise has encouraged other African leaders and movements, creating momentum for a Pan-African awakening that challenges centuries of subjugation. The struggle is far from over, but Traoré has already altered the terms of debate. No longer can Western powers assume automatic compliance. No longer can they dictate the destiny of nations without resistance. This is the essence of Traoré's first strike back at Western power. The refusal to bow, the willingness to endure pressure, and the determination to inspire his people with the belief that dignity is worth more than